How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. Glad to have you with me. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. If you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, the 4 things to know in the afternoon, all the social media links, everything you need. It was not a good day at the United States Supreme Court for Donald Trump. I have occasional correspondents who are very progressive. All of them, every single one of them, have whipped themselves into existential frenzy about the death of our democracy. The amount of progressives in the press and among the pundit class who are convinced our democracy is dead and there's no coming back. It boggles my mind. You would be amazed at the number of them who, because Donald Trump won a democratic election and won fair and square, they're so horrified by what happened on January 6th. They can't imagine people would vote for Donald Trump. The fact that people did shows our democracy is broken. And they never actually want to examine why people did that. And when you explain, well, yeah, people put their economic interests ahead of all this highfalutin democracy stuff, they're like, well, that's why democracy's broken. People care more about their pocketbook than democracy is centered around economic issues, you idiots. And then they're like, and the courts won't stop him. The courts won't stop. The courts have repeatedly stopped Donald Trump. And I find, by the way, a lot of these people, they believe, for example, that ICE agents have stormed into churches and disrupted church services. In fact, I had a guy on social media this morning insist to me, how could you not condemn ICE agents storming into churches and arresting people during church services when you're condemning these protesters? Because Border Patrol and Immigration have not done that. There is no evidence anywhere that immigration officers went into churches and interrupted church services to arrest immigrants. There's none. Someone who is Canadian sent me screenshots of headlines of ICE agents going into churches. When you actually look at the articles, parking lots, they were in parking lots. They didn't actually go into churches. But the amount of people on the left who believe things that just are not so, and they insist people on the right believe things that are not so, and I admit it, I fully agree with them. It's just they can't recognize the same on their own side. There was an academic study years ago, cannot remember the name of it, but essentially what it discovered is that progressives are unable to recognize authoritarianism on their own side, in their own tribe, that conservatives can recognize authoritarianism on conservatives, but progressives can't recognize it on their own side. They refuse to admit it. They refuse to recognize it. They build up an entire mythology of things that are not so. One of the things that progressives have embraced now is the idea that no judges will hold Donald Trump accountable. In fact, the New York Times ran a study the other day about how all of these progressive judges are being overruled on appeal. The progressives are losing on appeal. Well, it's not because Trump-appointed judges are giving Donald Trump what he wanted. It's that the progressive judges are trying to stop the president from the lawful exercise of presidential power. And for all of the people who are convinced the Supreme Court refuses to serve as a bulwark against the president, you should have listened to the oral arguments in the United States Supreme Court today. There is a progressive commentator who will go nameless, don't want to pick on him really. Well, I do want to pick on him, but not give him attention. he is out with tweets. See, the conservatives got Lisa Cook's lawyer to concede the president has the power to fire people. Oh, yeah, Paul Clement, he conceded that and then won the rest of the argument. The fact that you've got social media commentary from conservatives today trying to twist this argument in the Supreme Court to make it sound like the lawyers were siding with Trump is nonsensical to anyone who actually listened to the argument. It was a brutal day in the United States Supreme Court for Donald Trump. Let me just read you a synopsis from Ann Merrimaw, who is with the New York Times. The Supreme Court on Wednesday seemed poised to reject Donald Trump's bid to immediately remove Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board, with key justices expressing concern about undermining the longstanding independence of the central bank. Justices from across the ideological spectrum questioned whether the allegations President Trump lodged against Ms. Cook, an unproven assertion she engaged in mortgage fraud, were serious enough to allow the president to fire her. They suggested it was premature for the court to resolve the case. While there are still factual disputes about those allegations, they sounded skeptical Ms. Cook received sufficient notice of Mr. Trump's accusations and an opportunity to respond. Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, often in the majority, noted former Fed chairs and Treasury secretaries warned against allowing presidents to immediately remove Ms. Cook. Accepting the president's view, Justice Kavanaugh said, would weaken, if not shatter, the independence of the Federal Reserve. Even Justice Thomas expressed skepticism over some of the arguments made by President Donald Trump's attorney, the Solicitor General. Justice Alito wondered why they were even hearing the case and why the president did as he did. That's the New York Times. Here's the Washington Post headline. Supreme Court appears likely to allow Lisa Cook to remain on Federal Reserve. From Justin Jovenel, the Supreme Court on Wednesday appeared likely to block President Trump from firing Democratic-appointed Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board while a lawsuit challenging her removal plays out, a move that would prevent Trump from exerting greater influence over the power of the central bank. The Supreme Court's ruling, which is expected to come in weeks or months, is one of the most significant tests of the president's push to expand presidential power. Paul Clement, Lisa Cook's attorney, said judges did have the power to review Cook's ouster, as the Solicitor General told the justices that judges had no power to do that. I'm skimming through here. Kavanaugh, by the way, has written law review articles on the preserving the independence of the Federal Reserve, and he was a hot commodity today, asking lots of questions. Now, you've heard from the New York Times. You've heard from the Washington Post. Here's the Wall Street Journal. The Supreme Court has concluded a nearly 2-hour hearing in the case of Lisa Cook, a Biden-appointed member of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. The justices signaled overwhelming concern about how Trump's attempt to remove Cook played out. They seem far less certain about how the court might resolve the case. They were deeply skeptical that the president could win the immediate argument. Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas seemed deeply frustrated that they were even there over what amounted to a tweet. Alito seemed downright incredulous that the president had attempted to fire Lisa Cook through a social media tweet on Truth Social. By the way, you know, the mortgage fraud allegations, the Paul Clement, Lisa Cook's attorney, said, how can the president fire her? There was not even a factual finding by the president to dispute the evidence, and the evidence is easily disputable. John Roberts says, I mean, how would you dispute the claim, Mr. Clement? And he said, well, it was clearly an error because the very application claiming that her residence, that her one residence was a primary residence, also listed it as a vacation home, which definitionally is not a primary residence. It was clearly an error in filling out the paperwork, which the president didn't know because the president didn't order a review. By the way, I bet many of you who are convinced that Lisa Cook committed mortgage fraud did not know that on the very same paperwork that showed that her second home was listed as a primary residence, it also showed it listed as a vacation home. Did you know that? That was the key attachment to the primary paperwork. The primary paperwork showed it was a primary residence, and when you actually looked at the description of the home that was attached, it listed it as a vacation home. And before you say, well, Erickson, obviously they put primary residence on the cover sheet to obfuscate, that's not the way this works, people. As a lawyer who did residential closings, the whole document binds itself. So if the front page says it's primary residence and then the actual description of the home that binds the document listed as a vacation home, well, that's the one that tends to govern. Regardless of your argument, however, the United States Supreme Court today, from the left to the right, first expressed deep skepticism the president could actually fire Lisa Cook through a Truth Social post. Alito, in particular, was just flabbergasted that they were there over a social media tweet. They expressed deep skepticism the president could, and then also that the president could do so over this particular situation. There was not a lot of dispute that the president can't fire these people. Just over this, Justice Kavanaugh himself savaged John Sauer, the Solicitor General, over the claims of independence of the Federal Reserve. And by the way, no one's arguing. You can argue about whether the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. You can do that. And you can argue about the independence of the Federal Reserve compared to other entities. You can do that. But none of those issues were at stake today before the United States Supreme Court. They weren't arguing over the constitutionality of the Federal Reserve today at the United States Supreme Court. So you're not going to get that issue from the United States Supreme Court. You got to focus on what was argued, not what you would prefer to be argued. It was just a bad day for the president at the United States Supreme Court. And I would just remind progressives, I keep saying to you people, if you don't want the president to be able to do these things, take the power away from the president. None of you people who are upset with the president over this stuff want to take the power away from the president. You are upset that this president is the one using the power, not your president. If it was a Democrat, you would be fine with this stuff. And you can't say that your president wouldn't do this sort of abusive stuff, because we saw Joe Biden abuse the FACE Act to target conservatives. We saw Joe Biden abuse the pardon clause to pardon his family. We saw Barack Obama prosecute nuns over abortion. We saw Joe Biden prosecute churches or side with progressives who were harassing churches over their participation in charitable causes. We have time and time again seen the Democrats do these abuses, but you're like the guy on Twitter who really believes ICE is storming into church services and disrupting church services, something that didn't happen. But you say it enough, you believe it is so. You signal enough the virtuousness of your own side, you're convinced your side's virtuous when it's not. Again, the United States Supreme Court appears likely to restrain the president on this. By the way, the Alito reaction on this whole thing was very much like Alito's reaction on the tariffs. He couldn't believe the president did it by tweet, let alone did it at all. I think you're going to have two big cases here that the president loses. The conservatives, even Clarence Thomas, they were so skeptical of the president on tariffs, and they were so skeptical today that he could do as he did today with Lisa Cook. Some of them may actually say the president can fire her over something like this, just can't do it by tweet. All of you Democrats who have just whipped yourselves into existential terrors about Donald Trump and that the courts are doing nothing. The courts continue to restrain the president. You just don't recognize those cases. You only recognize the cases where he wins, and there are a lot of them. But there are a great many where he's being restrained by the Supreme Court and other courts. You just can't acknowledge it because it would shatter the narrative you've told yourself. And you would rather tell yourself fairy tales than acknowledge the truth. The president has boundaries and the Supreme Court is binding him to them. Have y'all heard of Cameron Kasky? He's running for Congress. He's his only accomplishment, really, and I don't want to sound cruel, but his only real claim to fame is he was involved in the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. He He became an outspoken gun control advocate after being at that school during that awful shooting in Florida, and got himself named one of the most 100 influential people in 2018, despite accomplishing nothing. Never advanced the gun control agenda or anything like that. Has declared himself a democratic socialist. He is actually a self-described theater kid. He's declared himself not gay but queer. I mean, the guy, he's got some issues. And we're in this realm now where people like to say the most outlandish stuff in order to get fame, and mostly on the left to do it about Donald Trump. Well, on CNN, Cameron Kasky blasted Donald Trump as purportedly involved in the Epstein stuff and a giant sex trafficking ring, and now he is having to retract it. His tweet today, I would like to retract, he originally said redact, my comments from CNN last night and truly apologize. Donald Trump was obviously not involved with a giant international child sex trafficking ring where women and children were systematically raped by elites. I said that by accident and didn't mean it. No, he said it intentionally. And Donald Trump can now sue him because when you accuse someone who is not involved in human trafficking, it doesn't matter if that person is famous. You have libeled, per se, that person, and Kasky can absolutely be sued by Donald Trump. The fact that the theater kid thought he could get away with it and then realized, oops, I can't, I need to retract this, says everything about Cameron Kasky. He's a theater kid. He pretends to be brave and bold and then says these outlandish things he has to tuck tail and run away from. And again, it's just, it's the tragedies, the school shooting. The second tragedy is the way we elevate spectacularly unaccomplished people who have been through tragedies like that and make it seem like they are actually somebody of some clout when, I mean, the guy's a college dropout who wants attention and is now getting that attention by running for Congress. Just we got to stop elevating these mentally unstable people. All right. Now, I need to tell you about Swiss America because they would love to help you understand what's happening with your money, with finances, with precious metals that keep going up. Swiss America has been sounding the alarm about a secret war on cash. They got it's assault on our freedoms. They want to tell you about. You can get their report completely free by calling or texting my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. It's spreading. Get the secret war on cash report completely free. Yeah, it does include digital forms of currencies. The government tries to control your spending. Call them at 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com/Eric. SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Swiss America can get you this report completely for free, get you educated on what's going on, and then you can talk to them. If you're interested in precious metals, I bought gold coins from them. They'd be able to help you. Just text Eric to 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. I'll take your phone calls when we come back. 877-973-7425. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. Do not forget, you can text Eric, ERICK, to 33777 should you wish to get all the social media links, show notes, and the like. Let's go to the phones here. I want to begin with Mike. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Not bad, thank you. How are you?
Great. What's going on?
Well, I was listening to your discussion about the Fed a while back and its independence, and I just want to suggest that it's not as independent as so many of us are used to thinking. And the reason why is that it never refuses to fund the debt. If it were independent, it would say, listen, Congress and President, you need to either cut spending or raise taxes because if we keep spending money, that's extraordinarily inflationary, which is not in our mandate, right?
Okay.
So it
that's,
seems to me. Go ahead.
Well, that's not really what the Fed does, though. I mean, it doesn't actually loan money to the government.
Well, it sells. Yeah, I know it, but it creates money by it creates bonds, it sells them and prints money to buy them. It's a
right.
It's not a scheme that's built on firm soil.
Yeah, you're right, but I mean that's how Congress structured it. So I mean, what you're saying is that the Fed as an independent agency, it can't tell Congress we're not going to do this mandate because we don't like what you've done. I mean, if Congress passes a budget of $9 trillion and it's only got $5 trillion in the bank, the Fed doesn't actually print the money. We've got a different entity that prints the money to cover this. The Fed doesn't even actually loan money out to the government. It's actually prohibited by law from lending money to the government. It buys securities in the secondary market. It adjusts interest rates to stimulate the economy is its primary purpose, and then it does lend money to banks. It's essentially it takes money and tells banks we'll put this into the market. You can get money from us, but it doesn't. It's only independent to a point. I mean, I'm using the word independent because it's set up to have individuals who are not appointed directly by the government to steer its chartered purpose. But no, the Fed is an entity of the government of the United States. In terms of being independent, it just means it's not directly controlled by the president or the Congress. That's all independent means in this regard. The Fed has no ability to tell the government we're not going to carry out our mandate. It has a legal obligation to carry out a particular mandate. It can't get away from it. It's bound by the terms of its charter. John, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Hi, Eric. I'm good. How are you? Thank you very much for taking my call. I love the show. Wanted to say a few things about Iran situation, if you give me a few minutes.
Please do. I was about to get there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Well, I heard on your show, I think it was last week, that you were talking about the start of the problem, the protesting and stuff that they're having now was the bank, one of the big bank that went under. That yes, that is true. When a big organization like that bank goes under, it affects the economy. But you cannot compare it with the situation that we had over here in 2008 and 9. That the overall economy went bad because some of the banks had bad loans to regular citizens that wanted to buy homes and stuff, and home prices went down for whatever reason it was. Banks over there, they're corrupt, that only loan money to the people that are close to the government. And we're not talking about little money to buy a house. There are billions and high dollar amounts that they loan it, and that called bad loan. And what they do, it's with that bad loan, they just walk away and never return the money. And obviously that's the government money that when that bank goes under, it affects everybody in that society, and all they have to do is just print more money, and inflation affects everybody, average citizens' life, that they cannot afford their grocery next day. And that's the start of the protesting. And now we're not paying enough attention to the situation that humans are getting killed on the streets every day. 2 days, 20,000 people. If we were cutting trees, 20,000 trees in 1 day or 2 days, there were lots of people raising hell that what are we doing with these live things on the on forest and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
John, so like I got to say that the president had announced today, or actually it was the Pentagon while he was in Davos, that they are replenishing and moving around Patriot missile batteries in anticipating the arrival of an aircraft carrier into the Persian Gulf. I'm very frustrated that the president told the protesters to get into the streets, take over their institutions, help us on the way, and they proceeded to do it. And I have to tell you guys, a number of human rights activists are saying the death toll could be as high as 50,000 people in Iran. The government is willing to admit to 20,000 people. When an authoritarian government is willing to admit to 20,000 people being killed, it probably is much higher. The 50,000 actually makes sense, and it's a lot of young people, many of whom are so badly disfigured because they were shot in the face, you can't identify them. It's a horrible human rights tragedy. Protests are still continuing, but they've been subdued because they thought help was on the way from the president because he said so and nothing came. I'm hoping something comes from the president. I hope we see more. It's a horrible situation, and we should keep our eye on the situation, and hopefully we can undermine that regime. But one of the big problems is Israel and the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Egyptians are not convinced that we can scuttle this regime, given just how infested it is into society. And I still think we ought to try. I think we ought to. Now, I got to move on because I got to talk about something hyperlocal, but is also national. Now, I want to pull back the curtain very slightly here to preface what I'm about to say, that when I talk about things in my area in Georgia, sometimes we'll get a program director somewhere elsewhere in the country say, it's too specific to your part of the country. We're not interested. So I try to be careful here, but this is actually a national story. I've mentioned to you guys over the last few days that there was a special election in my backyard, the 18th State Senate District in Georgia. By the way, I know the Georgia legislature is meeting right now, and you guys need to listen to this if you're a Republican. So my friend John Kennedy, he's running for lieutenant governor in Georgia, and there's a quirk in the law in the state of Georgia that if you're running for an office and you want to run, you don't have to resign if the terms overlap. If the terms don't overlap, you got to resign. Kennedy did not technically have to resign, except there are like 8 people running for the seat, and the rule is you can't fundraise if you're in the state legislature while the legislature is meeting. So he stepped aside so he can raise his money. I've got several friends. I'm staying out of it. I'm just saying John Kennedy is one of them. There are a number of great people running. I'm not endorsing, staying out of it. I got too many friends in the race. But John and I practiced law together for a while. We were in separate firms in the same building. We know each other socially. He's a good guy. He resigned from the seat, so there's a special election for it. And it is a 20-plus or 10-plus, 15-plus Republican district. Essentially, the Republicans should get about 15 points above 50, and the Democrats should get about 15 points below 50. In the worst-case scenario, it should be about 60-40. Or in the best case scenario, it should be about a 70-30 Republican district. Special election was yesterday. Special elections in Georgia. Everybody, Democrat and Republican, run on the same ballot. And yesterday, the Democrat got 40% of the vote. It's going into a runoff. There were, I think, 5 or 6 Republicans running against one Democrat. The Democrat who ran is a very far left progressive, so much so that I know a number of Democrats who said if they lived in the district, they would have to oppose the guy because he's such a nutter. He actually is a Democratic socialist. The Democratic Party was backing him, but you know the group that was backing him the hardest and most ardently is the Working Families Party, the far left party that was formed in New York City. It's spread around the country. The Working Families Party is a quasi-communist party, and I don't say that lightly. If you're a longtime listener, you know I don't use the word communist lightly. This guy, communist. I went and voted yesterday. My guy, Stephen McNeil, he's going to be in the runoff. He's a lawyer here in town, good Republican, longtime conservative, and he will be in the runoff. The problem is this, and Republicans in Atlanta, listen to me, and all of you nationwide, you need to hear me out here. Don't tune me out and say, oh, he's just talking about Georgia. This is about you too. Yesterday, I got a text message yesterday morning from a Democratic-backed group. It said, the race is today. We have a very good shot at winning this seat outright or getting into a runoff. If you need a ride to the polls, click this link. The Democrats in Georgia had an operation going in this state Senate district that's a 60-40 Republican district on the worst day. And they were driving people to the polls. If you needed a ride to the polls, you click the link, and they would send someone to pick you up to drive you to the polls. Not a single one of the Republicans did that. Nor did the Georgia Republican Party do that. I see the Georgia Republican Party, and no offense to Josh McCoon, who I like, and I know he's got a difficult problem right now internally with the party, but Georgia Republicans are pounding their chests about what a great big deal this was and how great it was. They didn't do jack. They didn't do a damn thing to help. The local candidates did all the heavy lifting. Oh, sure, there was a little outside agitation, but very little by the statewide Republican Party. No major outside groups came in to help. Now, they're in the runoff. The Republican made the runoff against the Democrat. The Democrat got 40% of the vote. The Republicans split 60% of the vote. And you know what the Republicans are saying now? Well, there's no way the Democrat can win the runoff. We're safe. Y'all, they literally were busing people to the polls, and not a single Republican was. They were so well organized. This seat, there's no way they should have won, and they came within 10 points of winning outright in a divided Republican field. And guess what? If all of their voters show up, again, and only the Republican candidates' voters show up, not all the other Republican candidates' voters show up, the Democrat's going to win. This is a state Senate seat in the middle of Georgia. But this is happening across the country. This is happening in swing districts around the country. The Democrats are showing up to win, and the Republicans are not. In fact, the Republicans have very little motivation to go vote. This is showing up in polling. And you could say, well, the polling's wrong, except the polling is reflecting the reality in all of these seats where the Republicans are sitting on their butts, staying home. Well, all the other Republicans are going to go vote. I don't have to. Or, well, I'm aggravated with the Republicans. I'm not going to go vote. The Democrats are highly motivated to go vote. They're highly motivated to go vote in Montana. They're highly motivated to go vote in Iowa. They're highly motivated to go vote in Louisiana. They're highly motivated to go vote around the country, in Florida as well. The Democrats are showing up to vote, and the Republicans aren't. There is no way in a normal election year the Democrats should come close to doing what they did yesterday in the middle of Georgia. They came close to winning it outright. The organization of the Democrats, these are hungry people. In politics, hungry people are dangerous people. Hungry people start revolutions. Hungry people vote for not fantastic candidates, but those candidates have promised them they'll stop being hungry, so they vote for them. Hungry candidates do what must be done to win. The Republicans in Georgia and elsewhere, they're not hungry. In Texas, you Republicans are comfortable looking at all of the problems that have plagued your attorney general and thinking, hey, this guy, he can get all the way to the U.S. Senate because he tickles your ears and scratches your itch over being pro-Trump. You're like, let's make him the nominee so you can spend lots of money trying to get a deeply flawed candidate to Washington, D.C., and pay no attention to the other Senate candidates around the country who also need the money that your guy's going to consume to save Texas from the Democrats. Or you could keep your incumbent, who none of us particularly care for, but is a reliable vote for the president's agenda. In Georgia, you got Mike Collins. He's got a House Ethics Committee investigation, and he's been doing his best to say it's no big deal. But his chief of staff, who he continues to stand by, who also does stuff with his campaign, has had all sorts of legal issues. And now you got the congressman involved in an ethics scandal. And guess what? John Ossoff is an expert at running campaigns, attacking the other guy's ethics. And you've got a district in a state that is increasingly swingy. But he says the right things, and he's loyal to Trump. And, he's got a great social media game, so let's give him the nomination, just like we did Herschel Walker, because he's the most loyal Trump guy. How did that work out for you with Herschel Walker? In North Carolina, Roy Cooper, the former governor of the state, is ahead of the Republican running, and the Republicans are divided there. How's that going to work out for you? The Democrats are hungry for a win, and the Republicans are not. And when candidates in swing states are hungry for wins, they tend to win. When candidates make the case, they make the case to win. By the way, for you Republicans in Georgia who want to know how this guy, Stephen McNeil, won, you know the two big issues that he ran on outside of being a standard conservative? Opposition to the speed cameras in front of schools and opposition to thoughtless supply of data centers without considering the zoning ordinances. Opposition to just putting data centers wherever you want to put data centers, and opposition to the speed cameras got the guy into the runoff. You Republicans in Atlanta should take notice that these issues are percolating among your base. Hello there. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. Those of you on the lines, be patient. Short segment here. I ran a little long there. It's okay. We've got much more to cover, including more on the Trump administration at Davos. Can I just say, I always find Davos worthless. The global elite are some of the most out-of-touch people on planet Earth, godless, secular people who really do think that they can flip the switches and pull the levers and turn the knobs and have their outcomes foreordained. And many of them live very isolated existences in bubbles. But my goodness, progressives, I shouldn't say progressives, Democratic strategists are savaging Gavin Newsom in Davos. Why? Because he got his picture taken with Alex Soros, and they're deeply upset that that Soros could run behind Newsom, and they don't think Newsom's a strong candidate for the general election. Now, my daughter is gone for 5 months. Were she home, she would be taking very long showers with our tankless water heater. Someone asked me this morning if during a power outage, what does the tankless water heater do? Well, you can actually put it on like a UPC backup, power backup. You don't have to have a generator. You like the one that keeps your computer going. And it is so hyper efficient that it'll keep going even when the power's out. You keep getting hot water. That's how genius these things are. We got our setup like that. The plumber who installed the thing said, yeah, just get yourself one of those computer UPCs and plug it in there. And if the power goes out, you're still going to have hot water, unlike your regular water heater. Holy cow, it works. Go to talkingtankless.com and you can have hot water forever with Renai. Made in the USA water heater. Made in the USA, hyper efficient. Our power bill went down. We never run out of hot water. You won't either. Talkingtankless.com. Go to that website. Find out how to ditch your tank for a tankless water heater. Talkingtankless.com. You can thank me later. You'll love this thing.